Yes, ladies and gentlemen, let's give him a big round of applause. The organizing committee now would like to thank Yang Berhormat Dato Nasrun, Dato Mansur, Dato Lee Yao Chor, and Tan Sri Dato Dr. Yusuf Basuron for presenting the PILA Award to its recipient, Yang Berbahagia Tun Musa Hitam.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Yang Berhormat Deputy Minister, Secretary General, Chairman of the Palm Oil Council and members of the Council, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It's a long time since I attended a function whereby I am the center of attraction and that so many good things are said about me. I must warn you that I was a politician before, and that being given such high praise, the politician tends to get out of hand, especially when he makes a speech. So it is with that fear, Mr. Chairman, as I told you just now, that I've decided to write and read the speech so that I don't get lost in between. To begin with, let me say how honored I am tonight to be given this award. Let me say this, and that is, we're living in a country, Malaysia, a country full of awarders and awardees all year through. And each time, the print media, I suspect, thrives with full page, half page, and quarter page congratulatory messages relating to honors and awards in one thing or another. For me though, I must humbly boast, if it makes any sense at all, that I rarely accept awards, even though quite a few came my way. No offense to any awarders, but I must confess that is quite a tiring and oftentimes expensive affair, this is. So just to let you know that tonight's honor that is being bestowed on me is really an offer I simply could not say no to. So thank you, Malaysian Palm Oil Council and those related, and thank you for all your support and your presence tonight. During the course of my long life, for over 80 years now, you must know it because the date of birth was mentioned, the year of birth of mine was mentioned just now. I have personally been around or been part of events that relate to oil palm. Whether at the village level, in the town, state, national, and even international levels, I have been there. You might then simply ask, how come? Well, let me elaborate. As I grew up in Kampong Baru, Johor Bahru, I remember the patches of the oil palm growing rather wildly around the village areas. These palms were never appreciated until during the war years, when I learned that the fruits could be crushed, and I personally as a child found it out myself, and that the oil that came out of it could be used for frying and cooking. It was during the war years too that in Johor Bahru, I witnessed the ingenuity of the Japanese occupying forces, who created some very crude-looking machines to drive their lorries. The machines belching out smoke as a result of the crude palm oil used to drive these lorries. And on looking back, only did I realize that that was biofuel in its most crude form then. Then onwards, much later on, as an assistant district officer in the district of Kluang, I literally lived among rubber and oil palm trees, as well as people from different stratas of society, living their lives dependent on these agricultural crops. I'm talking about those who work the fields, those who supervise the works, those who managed, and those who supported the industry in one way or another. Indeed, the whole district of Kluang then was mostly economically dependent on plantations. One needs to say here that it was the plantation industry, spearheaded by rubber and later oil palm, that was the real reason for our country's economic developmental success. It was the political foresight and responsible national leadership after independence that made Malaysia the #1 rubber and palm oil producers and exporters in the world, until rather recently, of course. Let us then, at the start of this very significant night, pay tribute to all Malaysians and foreigners alike who had contributed so much to our success in making these two commodities the pillars of our economic success. We learned, we applied, and we labored. We learned from the early British and other foreign managers. We ourselves became managers and applied the knowledge and lessons learned. As it happened, my comeback into government at the beginning of the 70s as a young man, after being out on a sabbatical, in inverted commas, my comeback was as chairman of FLDA. It was during that stint that FLDA became Felda. That was a time within Felda that I reunited with some of my best university classmates, such as Raja Alias and Nasir Yusuf. These were two of the many personalities of dedication and integrity that were chosen to lead the government's charge against deprivation and poverty through Felda. Those were actually the early days of our dependence on rubber, and rightly so. But then, even while enjoying the national benefits from rubber, the leadership was already working on agricultural diversification, as mentioned earlier. This awareness was well demonstrated by the establishment on Tun Musa's initiative of a palm oil research center in the middle of Pahang amidst plantations under the management of Felda. That, I must admit, was my first formal introduction to the oil palm as a recognized agricultural industry. It was as early as that, at the first ASEAN EEC meeting in Brussels, I was designated somehow or other as advisor on palm oil to the ASEAN delegation. That was how I literally jumped into matters relating to palm oil internationally, a matter that increased importance in ASEAN EEC, otherwise known as EU, and overall economic relations with the rest of the world. Ladies and gentlemen, there is no doubt that Malaysia had made a great success of the palm oil plantation industry. When at the palm's country of origin in West Africa, for example, it was a common sight to see people there daily picking the palm fruits from their few palms around their houses in order to crush the fruits and use the oil for cooking. We in Malaysia by then had already introduced the estate concept successfully and benefiting from it. But we need to remind ourselves, though, that being successful does bring along with it serious challenges. It was because we were successful and we are successful that the world started to take notice of us. We were the new kid on the block, growing very fast into a giant. To them, trying to rein in the perceived threat of this giant was not easy, since we were well organized, we were efficient, we were productive, and most important of all, we were competitive. Within just around a decade of our emergence as a major world player, we were everywhere. Whether in the US or in Europe, as two of the most developed regions of the world, palm oil was fast emerging to be an important part of their daily dietary needs. Within the developing world earlier on, palm oil was dominated by the so-called Basra contract, which restricted it to the only channel through which the commodity could be sold. Worse still, for us producers, was that palm oil was designated as an industrial oil, just allegedly to restrict the oil's accessibility. It was in this sort of competitive environment that the anti-palm oil lobby resorted to scaring consumers that the palm oil was a health hazard. But thanks to intensive scientific research, it was proven that the allegations were not only untrue, but as a bonus, it was discovered that the palm oil actually contains positive health benefits. In searching for anti-palm oil arguments, They have found a very credible and strong case against us, if I may put this in an us and them situation. The oil palm plantations, they claimed, destroyed the environment, destroyed wildlife, and destroyed the ecosystems. Believe me, those are very strong arguments indeed. To begin with, let us admit that we did do what were claimed on us to have done in the process of developing the palm oil. Personally, I even thought that we used to exploit our forests as though they were vending machines. We cut down valuable forests. We caused havoc in wildlife. Let's admit those. Much to our credit, though, very soon enough, we ourselves accepted our own accountability and responsibility, and within a few years, we took various steps to ensure sustainable development. And referring to my own statement that I made as Minister of Primary Industries, I did say that, and I quote, "Malaysia should be ashamed of ourselves to be the #1 exporters of tropical timber. That means we are raping our forests." End of quote. It was following that statement that the numerous legislation that had taken place, that had been formulated, like the formation of the National Forestry Council, together with other steps that led to the formation of PORIM and other related bodies, as mentioned earlier, were indeed, these actions indeed was meant to develop awareness and ensure that our palm oil were all developed with sustainability in mind. Let the lobbying and explanations of our method of sustainable palm oil development be left to real experts. Many of you are here. The real experts, among which Tan Sri Yusof Basiron and his dedicated team has been dealing with. I think Tan Sri Yusof here deserves mention because to me, he's one whom I regard as indefatigable in pursuing our case on palm oil. But for me though, whenever I'm involved in arguments and discussions on the subject, I always offer a simple counter-argument as per these very brief examples. In Washington, I would remark, today I had such smooth landing at Washington Airport. And as a Malaysian, I'm thankful to the rubber that we produce that makes up the resilience of the tires that the aeroplane use. It is unfortunate, though, that the rubber crops have to be planted on huge areas of land. Forest lands have to be cut and make way for the rubber trees. And surely, wildflowers and fauna as well as animals must have been sacrificed. And looking around at the very rapid development of the United States itself, and particularly Washington, I'm sure, there must have been forests cut down and even natives of the land displaced. There's always embarrassed silence among them. Number two, when I was with quite a few NGOs in Holland to face their criticisms on our palm oil production, I simply praised Holland for the country's success. I also praised the beautiful setting for our meeting at a lodge in a rather small area of forest. But then I said, driving through here, I could not help but think how much of forest there must have been that are now replaced by wheat and tulip fields, not to mention the thousands of cattle grazing about. Maybe you would never know what types of animals of different species must have been roaming around, but have become extinct and disappeared. Of course, you all know what I'm trying to drive at, but my message was quite simple. You, developed countries, have indeed developed. But we also want to develop. You, the developed countries, committed mistakes earlier on. But we must avoid those mistakes and learn from those big mistakes. While your development much earlier was never based on sustainability, we, on our part, must base ours on sustainability. We surely wish it to be, and we will. So, let us be sure of these promises then. And let us get on with it. And with hard work, dedication, and confidence, I am sure we will continue to thrive. I'm sure we'll continue to be successful, and I'm sure we would be able to uphold our good name that would get better and better as a country that develops a product that the world needs, yet a product that certainly would not be wished to destroy us ourselves. God bless us all. Thank you, and thank you very much for your support.